So I'm going to start this video with a little bit of a disclaimer. Technically, you guys shouldn't be trying to mix 2-track beats, right? We should be asking for the stems. Hopefully you have access to the stems. Hopefully you can contact the producer. That's ideal. That's best case scenario. But I know there's these situations where the artist comes in, they don't book too much time. They book 2 to 4 hour blocks. They just want to get in and get out. They have their beats like pre-selected, or they tell you to download a beat from an email, or they tell you to rip the beat right off YouTube. Stop doing that, guys. Stop stealing beats from YouTube. But as the engineer, I know it happens. You guys don't have much control of that. You're just trying to satisfy your client, and then the client is going to get you to do all that. Download the 2-track beat, throw it in the session. You don't have much to work with there. So the goal of this video is to kind of help you guys work through that. And I'm going to do this with relatively inexpensive plugins. They're easily accessible. So hopefully this helps you guys out. Let's just get right into it. So this is a little 3 plugin chain I've been using on my 2 tracks. Again, ideally we would like to have the stems, but I know that's not always the scenario. That's not always the situation when you're in your home recording studios or even in commercial studios. You got a lot of artists that come in with beats already. And the challenge with this is, since you don't have stems, you don't have much control, but you have to get the production to sit well with the vocal. And then you also have to do some kind of form of mastering, right? And then if you don't have control of the low end too much, et cetera, you guys know this. So this is a little 3 plugin chain that's been helpful to me lately, and I've been using it in multiple sessions, and I'll show you guys what I'm doing here. So here I have my 2-track beat. It's going into a bus that says production. I don't know why I created a bus. It didn't really need that. I could have just put these plugins right on the track, but that's irrelevant. We're gonna continue moving forward. Probably because if I wanted to add other elements, etc., that they would all go through the same mix bus treatment. But we didn't do that, and I just set that up that way initially. But here we go. The first thing here is a touch-up EQ. Nothing too crazy. The production did sound great. Shout out to the producer on this one. Actually, let me play you the track before we move forward with this. It's kind of like a Jersey club drill kind of thing going on here. It's a big popular sound in New York, New Jersey right now. So let's check this out. So obviously, being like Jersey club, this style has a big, heavy, boomy low end. I did control that a tiny bit over here in around 40 hertz. I just did a little quick tuck. It gave me a little more control. But the next thing I have in my chain, again, we just have 3 plugins here. The next thing I have in my chain, the next 2 things, let's say, the next 2 things I have are both from Waves, and these are relatively inexpensive plugins, around the $30 mark. That's not the only reason I love them, not simply because of the price, but they're also great tools and super easy to use, and I'll show you how to use these things, and I'll explain what they're doing exactly. Again, after our touch-up EQ, we have our MV2. So the MV2 is basically a compressor, but it has 2 forms of compression and 2 knobs. This thing is super easy to use and it sounds great. First and foremost, we have our low level and our high level. So our low level is an upward compression, meaning the lower dynamics in our signal, it's going to bring those up without affecting the higher peaks. A normal compressor would kind of like smash both. This one, you have control of them individually. So the high level compression, those are our higher peaks, bringing them down. And then the low level compression is our lower peaks, bringing them up. So I kind of love what our low level compression does to the low end here. And as you know, compression has a lot of uses. If you guys are still like stuck on the fundamentals of compression, don't forget my book is available on Amazon. This is a quick, easy read. Goes over a lot of these fundamentals, so I'm going to keep bringing these things back up. This is like assuming you know how to control dynamics and you know the basic fundamentals of compression. If you do, this is super easy to use. Then the last thing we have here is our output gain, which is basically just our volume, so I turned that down a little bit. So let's see the difference that this makes so far. I'm going to bypass these 3, and then we'll just do these one at a time. So far, we did some touch-up EQ, and then we did a little bit of compression, upward compression, downward compression. So let's see the differences these things made. So first, we did our touch-up EQ. So if I bypass that, just cleans it up a little bit, and then that goes into our compressor. See, that low end feels a little more controlled. So that the top end, we're controlling our dynamics there. And then the third thing I have here is called center. This is also from Waves. What center does is we're messing with the stereo width of things here. So we have a few options here. They're pretty self-explanatory. The first thing is the low end. We can decide whether we want the low end more in the center or off to the sides. We can decide if we want the highs more in the center or off to the sides. We can decide where we want the punch. So as you can see, I sort of like monoed everything a little bit, not completely, not all the way. I kind of just put things more off to the center. And then we have a volume for the center and a volume for the sides. And then a final just master here. So I put that on the end. The order of these plugins doesn't necessarily matter. I'll show you some other sessions where the order is not exactly the same. I'm still using the MV2, the center, and the touch-up EQ though. Again, the EQ doesn't have to be FabFilter. You can use stock. You can use whatever EQ you want to use. Just a EQ that you're accustomed to using where you can carve out boost frequencies and just, you know, just do some touch-up EQ. Obviously, the better that the production is mixed, the less of this you're going to have to do. This was a great production, I want to add. And so you'll see me using these things a lot more subtle. And the objective here, again, was to make room for the vocal. And also when going into our master, on this one in particular, I happen to do the Ozone mastering suite. So I sent that into my master. So when the production is going into my master, I also have a lot more control there. So that's the main thing we want to focus on, right? Like carving out space for the vocal and making sure it's not clashing with the vocal. And then the second thing is when we're sending things into the master, we're going to be cranking the levels and we want to make sure we have control of the lows, the mids, the highs, and nothing is getting out of control there when it's being compressed, cranked up, whatever you have going on in your master. So this gives me a lot more control. The touch-up EQ, the MV2 in the center. Again, I'll show you guys other sessions as well. Here's another example of the same thing, not necessarily in the same order. I did our center first here. You can see some of the decisions I made with the center. I put some of the highs more towards the center, some of the punch more towards the sides, some of the lows more towards the center. I did probably some volume adjusting here just on the center. I put a little lower. A lot of focus on the center here is probably carving out more room for the vocal because we, you know, our big lead is going to go straight down the center. Then I have the master that I turned up a little bit here. And then we went into our MV2. The upward compression here I have at 1.5. And then I did both of them at 1.5 in this case. So you're getting a similar type of compression on both. And then our output, I just turned it down a little bit. And then the final step was our touch-up EQ. This time we did the touch-up EQ last. You can do it this way as well. Probably brighten up the top end. Again, if we're dealing with an MP3, it might be a little dark on the top end because we're losing some high-end frequency information. So we just boosted the top end a little bit. Again, did some touch-up EQ, controlled the lows again a little bit. So here's the final result. And let me do this, bypass everything first and then go right back into it. Just sounds a little dry without it. When you add everything, sounds a little cleaner, a little tighter, a little more controlled. And that's our goal here, right? We don't have too much to work with. And this just kind of helps me just work around and get through that and still get like a great product and a final result when it's working with my vocal and being sent into my master. Hopefully you guys can make use of these tips and they help you guys out getting you through your 2-track mixes. If you guys are still getting stuck on some basic fundamentals, again, my book is live, 4 Horsemen of Mixing and Music Production. It's available on Amazon. You guys can check that out. That goes over a lot of these basic fundamentals as far as EQ, compression, stereo width. This tutorial kind of like assumes that you guys know some of those basic fundamentals. If not, you can check out the book or go back into some other videos that I have. So hopefully that helps you guys out with your 2-track mixes. I'll see you guys next time. Costa Sound TV.